When you spend your entire life working to build something from scratch, you don't expect the very people who claim to be your neighbors to try and take it from you. My ranch wasn't just some plot of land with a barn and a few animals. It was my family's blood, sweat, and history poured into the soil. My grandfather carved that property out of nothing more than brush and rocks, and over the decades, he and my father built it into a self-sustaining ranch. I grew up feeding the horses at sunrise, mending fences before school, and fixing tractors on weekends. That land was in my veins, and I wasn't about to let anyone tell me I didn't have the right to it. When the new HOA formed in the development on the other side of my property, I didn't think much of it. They bought up some lots, built cookie-cutter homes, paved over half the wildflowers, and slapped up a big sign that said, Meadow Creek Estates. I shrugged. If folks wanted to live in box houses with identical lawns and weekly HOA board meetings, that was their choice. My ranch stood outside their little jurisdiction, and I never signed a contract. I figured they'd do their thing, I'd do mine, and we'd never have to bother each other. That was until one summer morning when I saddled up my horse to check the north pasture and found a brand new metal fence blocking my access road. At first I thought it was some kind of mistake. But there it was, a shiny black gate with the HOA's logo on it, chained shut, and a laminated sign that read, Private Access, Meadow Creek Residents Only. My jaw tightened. That access road wasn't theirs. It had been a ranch road for decades, the only reliable path for me to haul equipment, move livestock, and get deliveries. I walked up to the gate and yanked on it, but it was padlocked tight. My horse snorted and pawed at the dirt as if he felt my frustration. I rode back around, found the HOA office, and marched right inside. Behind the counter was a woman in her mid-40s with short blonde hair, thick glasses, and the permanent scowl of someone who thinks rules are oxygen. "Can I help you?" she asked, though her tone suggested she'd rather do anything else. "Yeah," I said flatly. "There's a gate blocking my access road. My ranch is on the other side. That road's been there since before this place existed." She shuffled some papers and looked up at me like I'd interrupted her very important paper shuffling. "Oh, that." "The board voted to secure the neighborhood. We can't have non-residents using our private roads. Liability issues." I leaned on the counter. "That's not your road. That's my family's access to our ranch. You can't just fence me out." "Well," she said with a smug smile, "our records show it's part of the subdivision now. If you want access, you'll have to submit an appeal with the board. They meet the first Monday of next month. Until then, I'm afraid there's nothing I can do." I left before I said something I'd regret, but my blood boiled the whole drive home. My grandfather would have raised hell if anyone tried to cut him off from his land. And now here I was, boxed out by a bunch of people who didn't know the first thing about barbed wire, irrigation, or hard work. That night, I pulled out the property deeds and maps. Spreading them across my kitchen table, I traced the boundaries with my finger, double-checking the survey markers. Sure enough, that access road wasn't theirs. It was an easement that had been in our family's records since the 1960s. The HOA had no legal claim to block it. But instead of filing paperwork and waiting months for lawyers to argue it out, I decided to take a different route. I knew one thing for certain. If they wanted to play games with gates, I could play too. Over the next week, I went down to the county office, pulled every record I could on that strip of road, and confirmed my suspicion. Not only was the easement valid, but because of how the HOA had developed the area, the only way in and out for their residents was through that very gate. They'd fenced off their own lifeline, and I, by right of the easement, had partial control of it. That's when the idea hit me. If they wanted a gate, fine, but I was going to make sure it worked for me, not against me. I hired a local welder, a guy who'd done some custom work on my barns before, and told him I needed the gate modified. We brought in heavy equipment one morning, much to the confusion of the HOA residents who drove by. By the end of the day, the gate had been transformed. Where once there was just a padlock, now there was a full toll system, arm barrier, keypad, and a little booth on the side. It looked like something you'd see at a parking garage downtown. The best part? I set it up with a private toll system I owned and operated. Anyone wanting to pass through had to swipe a card or pay a fee. And because of the way the roads wound, that gate was their only practical exit. The day I flipped the switch, the neighborhood chaos began. Cars backed up as residents realized they couldn't just zip in and out anymore. Karen, the same clipboard-wielding officewoman, stormed out demanding answers. I leaned against the booth with a grin. You blocked my access to my ranch, I said. Turns out this road is mine by easement. So I figured we'd share. Fair's fair, right? You can use the road, just like me. But from now on, it's a toll road. Her face turned crimson. You can't do this. This is HOA property. Funny, I replied, holding up the deed copy. The county says otherwise. Court documents, survey maps, and every lawyer I've spoken to back me up. You fenced me out, but you fenced yourselves in. And if you want to get out, well, you'll have to pay the toll. She sputtered, but the cars honking behind her made it clear she had no choice. That first week, I watched as the money rolled in. Every HOA resident was now my unwilling customer. And the more they tried to fight it, the more tangled they became in their own mess. And that, my friend, was just the beginning. The first week of the toll road was pure chaos. I sat in my rocking chair on the porch with my coffee every morning, watching the line of cars back up past my mailbox. Folks who used to zip down the street without a thought now had to stop, dig into their wallets, and pay me for the privilege of driving on a road that had always been open. I wasn't charging much, just a couple of bucks per vehicle, but it wasn't about the money. It was about sending a message. You don't get to push a rancher off his land and expect him to roll over. The HOA residents weren't happy. Every day I'd hear complaints. One man leaned out his car window shouting, "This is extortion!" I smiled and waved. Another woman refused to pay and tried to sneak around the gate, but I'd already anticipated that. The shoulders were fenced off with thick posts, and there was no way around unless you wanted to plow through a ditch. She ended up reversing out while everyone honked at her. Karen, of course, was the loudest. She marched to my ranch one evening with a small entourage of HOA board members, all dressed like they were heading to a PTA meeting instead of dealing with a rancher. They demanded I cease and desist immediately. Cease and desist what? I asked, leaning on the fence. Using my own easement? Running my own toll system on my own property? I don't think so. This is illegal, she barked, her voice sharp enough to scare off birds from the power lines. Illegal? I chuckled. I checked with the county. Perfectly legal. You all fenced me out, remember? That gave me rights to manage this gate however I please. If you don't like it, maybe don't build fences where you don't belong. The board members exchanged nervous glances. They hadn't expected me to fight back, let alone flip the situation on its head. They left in a huff, muttering about lawyers. Sure enough, the next week I got a letter in the mail, a cease and desist notice from the HOA's attorney. I didn't even bother reading the whole thing. I forwarded it to my cousin, who just so happened to be a county lawyer with a specialty in property law. He laughed when he saw it. They don't have a leg to stand on, he told me. They're trying to claim ownership over land that's been in your family for 3 generations. You've got the easement, the deeds, and county records on your side. If they push this, it'll backfire hard. And backfire it did. Because the HOA couldn't figure out how to beat me legally, they tried to strong-arm me socially. They started a smear campaign, sending out flyers to their residents, calling me a greedy landowner and a threat to community safety. They claimed I was profiting unfairly and holding the neighborhood hostage. One flyer even had a cartoon of me drawn with devil horns, grinning at a pile of cash. I laughed so hard I almost fell out of my chair. If they're going to make me the villain, I thought, I might as well play the part, so I doubled down. I installed better lighting around the gate, painted the booth a bright red with the words "Toll Station" stenciled across it, and even hired a local teenager to sit in the booth and collect payments during peak hours. It gave him some extra cash and it freed me up to actually run my ranch. The funniest part? The toll money was starting to add up. What started as a petty revenge plan was turning into a surprisingly profitable side hustle. Between the steady stream of cars and the HOA's inability to stop me, I was pocketing hundreds of dollars a week just from them trying to drive home. But I wasn't done yet. One evening, as I was checking the toll records, I noticed something interesting. The HOA itself, meaning Karen and her little board, was racking up the biggest bill. Their meetings, their errands, their endless trips in and out of the subdivision were costing them more than any individual family. And because they refused to pay upfront cards like the other residents, they were paying double the rate at the booth. That gave me an idea. I printed out an itemized bill, listing every single time their vehicles passed through the gate. I calculated the totals down to the cent. Then I stuffed the invoice into an envelope and hand-delivered it to the HOA office. When Karen opened it and saw the 4-figure number, her face went pale. "This is outrageous," she snapped. "Outrageous," I said. "You built a fence across my road. You wanted control. Well, here's the cost of control. Pay your tolls like everyone else, or maybe, just maybe, consider removing the gate. She was speechless. For once, she didn't have a quick comeback. Over the next few weeks, the tension in Meadow Creek Estates grew thicker. Neighbors were split between those who begrudgingly paid me with grumbles and those who secretly enjoyed watching the HOA board squirm. I'd overhear folks whispering at the toll booth, "Honestly, good for him. Karen's been pushing everyone around for years. Maybe now she'll learn her lesson." Karen, though, wasn't about to admit defeat. She called the sheriff's office trying to claim I was illegally detaining residents. The deputy who showed up took one look at my deed copies and shook his head. "Ma'am," he told her, "this man has every right to do what he's doing. If you've got an issue, take it to court. Until then, you're paying the toll like everyone else." I nearly laughed out loud watching her face turn bright red as the deputy drove away. By now, my little toll booth had become the talk of the town. Local news even caught wind of it. One morning, a camera crew showed up at my gate, asking if they could run a segment about the rancher who turned the tables on his HOA. I agreed, of course. If there's one thing HOAs hate more than losing money, it's bad publicity. That night, I sat back on my porch, sipping sweet tea as the evening sun dipped behind the hills. My golden retriever lay at my feet, tail thumping lazily. The hum of crickets filled the air. Life felt good again, but I knew Karen wasn't finished. The HOA had too much pride to back down quietly. The way I saw it, the fight wasn't over, it was just heating up. And if they thought I was done making their lives difficult, they hadn't seen anything yet. Karen never took humiliation well. After the news story aired showing me leaning against my toll booth with a smug grin while cars lined up behind her, she looked like a balloon about to pop. That piece ran on the 6 o'clock local broadcast, and by morning, everyone in town was talking about it. Folks at the feed store slapped me on the back saying, "Good for you, making those HOA types eat their own medicine." But Karen? She doubled down. The very next day, I noticed something different about the gate. The HOA had plastered bright orange signs all over it. "Trespassers will be prosecuted," one read. Another said, "This road is HOA property. Unauthorized toll collection prohibited." I had to laugh. They could hang 100 signs, but it didn't change the fact that the easement was mine. The county records were crystal clear, and even the sheriff's office had already told them to back off. Still, the sight of those signs gave me an idea. I made my own sign, big, bold letters on a weatherproof board. I mounted it right above the toll arm. It read, "Private Toll Road. All funds support local ranch operations." That little touch had the dual effect of making the residents chuckle and driving Karen completely insane. She didn't waste time. 2 days later, I was out in the pasture fixing a water trough when I heard the rumble of multiple vehicles pulling up my driveway. I turned and saw not just Karen, but the entire HOA board, plus a man in a suit carrying a briefcase. They piled out like an army heading to war. Karen marched up to me. "We've had enough of your nonsense. This is harassment. You're extorting residents." The man with the briefcase cleared his throat. "I represent Meadow Creek Estates Homeowners Association. We are here to inform you that unless you immediately remove your toll booth, cease collecting payments, and restore open access, we will be filing a lawsuit for damages, fraud, and unlawful enrichment." I set down my wrench and wiped my hands on my jeans. "Is that so?" I asked calmly. "Yes," the lawyer said. "This will not end well for you." "Funny," I replied, "because the county clerk, the sheriff's office, and my cousin, who happens to be a property lawyer, have already confirmed I'm within my rights. In fact, I'd love for you to take me to court. Then when you lose, and you will lose, I'll sue you for legal fees, damages, and emotional distress." Karen's face went redder than a ripe tomato. "This isn't over?" she hissed. "You're right," I said with a grin. "It's just getting started." They stomped off, but I could see the uncertainty in their lawyer's eyes. He knew they were standing on shaky ground. Over the next week, the HOA tried every dirty trick in the book. First, they sent me letters claiming I owed them money for road maintenance fees. I mailed the letters back with one of my toll invoices stapled to the front. Then they tried organizing a boycott where residents refused to pay the toll. That lasted less than 2 days before people got tired of waiting for the arm to stay down. Some even came to me privately, whispering, "Keep it up. We're sick of Karen." Finally, Karen herself tried the most desperate stunt yet. I was sitting on the porch one Saturday morning when I heard sirens. A county sheriff's cruiser rolled up, lights flashing. Karen followed right behind in her SUV, practically bouncing in her seat with smug anticipation. The deputy stepped out, adjusting his hat. "Afternoon, sir," he said politely. "We've had a report that you're illegally operating a toll road and detaining residents." I didn't say a word. Instead, I walked inside, grabbed my neatly organized folder of deeds, easement maps, and the county's own documentation, and handed it to him. He flipped through the pages for a few minutes, nodding slowly. Finally, he looked at Karen. "Ma'am, this man is within his rights. This is a valid easement. He can manage access as he sees fit. You might not like it, but it's legal." Karen's jaw dropped. "What? No, you don't understand. He's stealing from us." The deputy sighed. "No, ma'am. He's charging a toll. You fenced yourselves in. That's on you. Now, unless you have an actual crime to report, I suggest you stop wasting county resources." I had to bite my lip to keep from laughing outright as the deputy tipped his hat and drove away, leaving Karen fuming in her SUV. She peeled out of my driveway like a teenager who just lost a drag race. After that stunt backfired, the HOA's grip on the neighborhood started to crumble. Residents were openly mocking Karen at meetings. Some even started hosting barbecues on my side of the fence, joking that it was cheaper to hang out with the rancher than deal with the HOA. Meanwhile, my toll road operation was thriving. I added an online payment option, letting folks buy monthly passes at a discount. To my surprise, most residents took me up on it. They figured if they had to pay, they might as well make it easy and cheaper. A few even told me they preferred dealing with me instead of the HOA because at least I was honest. One evening, I was in town at the diner when an older couple from Meadow Creek approached me. "We just wanted to thank you," the wife said. "That woman's been making our lives miserable for years. You're the first person who stood up to her." Her husband nodded. "Keep charging that toll. We'll gladly pay it if it keeps her in check." Their words stuck with me. I hadn't set out to be some sort of folk hero, but apparently that's what I'd become. The rancher who stood up to the HOA and turned the tables. Still, I knew Karen wasn't finished. People like her don't just roll over and accept defeat. They plot, they scheme. They wait for the perfect chance to strike back. And from the way she glared at me every time she passed through the toll gate, I could tell she was planning something big. The only question was, would she make one last desperate move? Or would she finally push too far and destroy herself? Either way, I was ready. Karen's last stand didn't come quietly. It came with fireworks, figuratively and almost literally. About 2 weeks after the sheriff shut her down, I woke up to pounding on my door at sunrise. I pulled on my boots, grabbed my coffee, and opened it to find my neighbor Hank standing there wide-eyed. "You'd better come see this," he said. We jumped in his truck and drove down to the gate. What I saw made me laugh so hard I nearly spilled my coffee. Karen and her little group of loyalists had set up what looked like a protest camp. They had folding chairs, handmade signs, and even a cooler full of sodas. One sign read, "No more tolls." Another said, "Freedom of the road." There they sat, blocking the entrance like they were defending the Alamo. I parked and strolled up, hands in my pockets. "Morning, Karen, camping out?" She leapt to her feet. "This ends today. We're exercising our right to protest." "By blocking the road you're demanding access to?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. That threw her off for a second, but she recovered fast. "We will not move until this toll is gone." Behind her, one of the residents groaned. "Karen, I've got work in an hour. Can we not do this?" But Karen ignored him. She was in her element, eyes wild, voice raised, convinced she was leading some grand revolution. I let her rant for a few minutes, then pulled out my phone. "Sheriff?" "Yeah, it's me again. Got some folks trespassing and obstructing access at the Meadow Creek gate." "Yep, same spot." "Uh-huh. Thanks." When the deputy rolled up 20 minutes later, Karen was still waving her arms like a preacher on Sunday. He stepped out, shook his head, and said, "Ma'am, we've been over this. You're trespassing on his easement. You need to clear out. This is tyranny." She shrieked. "We demand justice." The deputy sighed. "Ma'am, if you don't move in the next 30 seconds, I'll have to arrest you for obstruction." The crowd of protesters melted faster than butter on a skillet. Chairs folded, signs dropped, and within a minute, Karen was the only one left. Even she seemed to realize the jig was up. With one last glare in my direction, she stormed back to her SUV and sped off. The deputy chuckled. "You sure do keep me busy." Sorry about that, I said, grinning. Want a free toll pass? He laughed all the way back to his cruiser. That was the turning point. After the failed protest, Karen's support evaporated. Residents who once feared her now openly mocked her. HOA meetings went from tense battlegrounds to empty rooms. Some folks even started skipping them altogether, saying they'd rather pay my toll than listen to Karen scream for an hour. Then came the final blow. A county inspector showed up one afternoon with a clipboard in hand. He told me the HOA had been reported for multiple code violations, improper signage, unsafe fencing, even misuse of HOA funds. Turns out, while Karen was busy fighting me, someone inside had tipped off the county about her creative bookkeeping. 2 months later, Meadow Creek HOA was slapped with hefty fines. The board dissolved under the pressure and Karen resigned in disgrace. Word around town was that she quietly put her house up for sale not long after. As for me, my toll road became something of a local legend. I didn't need to run it forever, but I decided to keep it going, partly because the extra income helped with ranch expenses, and partly because it stood as a reminder that sometimes the little guy doesn't just fight back, he wins. To make it sweeter, I used a chunk of the toll money to improve the road itself. I had gravel brought in, patched potholes, and even set up better drainage. The same residents who once grumbled about paying started thanking me, saying the road was in better shape than it had ever been under HOA control. One evening, as the sun dipped low over the valley, I leaned against the toll booth and watched a line of cars roll through. Folks waved, some honked their horns, a couple even dropped off homemade pies as toll tips. Hank strolled up beside me. You know, you might be the first guy in history to turn an HOA fence into a business opportunity. I grinned. Guess that makes me an entrepreneur. Or a legend, he said with a chuckle. I didn't argue. The truth was, Karen had set out to cage me in. To push me down, humiliate me, and force me to bend to her will. Instead, she'd handed me the keys to victory. The fence meant to keep me out became my toll road. The HOA that thought it held all the power crumbled from within. And me? I walked away not just free, but stronger, richer, and prouder than ever. So every time I lower that toll arm and wave a neighbor through, I can't help but smile. Because I know the lesson's clear as day. You block my road, Karen? I'll turn it into a road you'll never forget.